talk speaking with Christopher Lee. And all I would say is just open your mind, listen to what he has to say. Great talk about innovation and what the future has to hold. But we were very enlightened and very, very interested. I think you'll really enjoy what he has to say. So Christopher Lee is the president and CEO of CL & Associates, one of the nation's leading real estate consulting and advisory firms. And I'll let him talk a little bit about that. And we have a whole hour for him to understand. So sit back, relax, and enjoy.
All right. Good afternoon to everybody. Come on. Good afternoon. It's 2018. It's the good news about 2018. We all start with a scorecard of 0, and we end up at the year. We figure out how well we did here. So it's exciting for me to be here. I'm glad you invited me. I think it's a great time for all of you to be in this industry because the industry is in such transition and such change. And the amount of things that are happening are going to restructure how you do work, how your jobs are, how you perform, how you interact with your companies. All these things are changing dramatically. And so I want to share a lot of that today with you. I'm going to leave with a little bit of some challenge as well here. So the agenda for today is the following. I'm going to share with you some headlines that you're likely to see over the next few years, things that you should be aware of that are happening here. I'm going to briefly talk about the 30 mega shifts that are happening in our industry here, the absolutely transformative things that are going on. And these transformative events all happen at the same time. So when you have 30 of these things happening, that is why our industry is changing so quickly and so dramatically. I'll get into very briefly some technology disruptors. I want to talk about where we are in the cycle, when this particular cycle of real estate and facilities and things is going to change, when this cycle like the end, when the next one's going to begin, and some of the drivers of that. Then talk about the outlook for just office and industrial, those particular asset classes. End up with, if I were you, recommendations to each of you. If I was you, what would I do? And then finish up with some predictions I think is going to happen by 2025. So I'm going to do all of that. There's 842 slides, so stay with me here. But those who would like copies of my slides after the presentation, just give me a business card. I'd be glad to send them to you. You can share them in your office or whomever you would like to do here. So let's get started. So what are some headlines that you're likely to see in the future? Do not be surprised to see a headline like this, where 40% of the jobs by 2030 can be automated. Now you say, oh my God, what's that is? Well, that was a McKinsey report that just came out. They studied the work across the U.S. and found out that 40% of the existing jobs today can be automated. So begin to look at your facilities, or else look to your left, look to your right, one of you is gone. No. But each case here, there's an automation going on. So this is going on, and it's going to impact all of you very, very dramatically. Do not please say a headline like this, where Apple announces a new iOffice technology to create virtual office buildings, virtual space. So what is space anymore? Space in real estate is being redefined. It's not necessarily just a building. It can also be a virtual office, a virtual facility, a virtual way in which people can connect. And that may be an aspect of your jobs as well. Where we begin to say it's not just the hard bricks and mortar, but in fact it could be something more than that. So do not be surprised to see a headline like this. And clearly Apple and Google and many others are moving in this direction. The impact of technology on our industry is dramatic. Do not be surprised to see a headline like this, where Amazon announces a new tenant robot that will be a companion for every occupant. Now you say, oh my God, I finally got an employee that'll do what I say, But each one of these things is absolutely coming to bear. Amazon last year hired 75,000 robots. That's what I will call them. They brought in 75,000 robots, and guess what? 45,000 jobs in Amazon were eliminated. So just understand that the impact here about robots and tenants having robots to do facility-related work inside the workplace, is going to be a reality in a very short period of time. Don't be surprised to see a headline like this. Google is absolutely moving to become the absolute global controller of data. and they are going to be acquiring perhaps a CBRE, or a JLL or other real estate service providers, because the interest in controlling data, interest in controlling workplace data, interest in controlling facility data is all going to be something that people like Google want to have. And they are working diligently to do that. So do not be surprised at headlines like this, and as Google and technology firms move increasingly into your space. Do not be surprised to see a headline like this, where Amazon launches its first flying warehouse. You might say, okay, Chris, come on. You're not from Colorado. You're not smoking the funny stuff, But when you take a look at this here, this was in the Wall Street Journal about 6 months ago. Amazon has got a patent to have flying warehouses. It's no longer going to be just on land. They're going to be moving goods into space and then using drones to deliver those packages to geographic areas that are not in major metropolitan areas. This is a reality. So how do you deliver, the companies you work for, how do they deliver the goods? Well, how do you facilitate? What are the logistics? This is this incredible change that's happening to our industry. And of course, do not be surprised at something like this, where corporate facilities are being managed remotely. Why do I need people? If technology can do that, if robots can fix dysfunctional air conditioning facilities, or fix elevators, or change things around. But these kinds of technologies exist today, and they are going to begin to creep into the facility part of the business. They're already talking about this being done with buildings that are less than 200,000 square feet, office buildings. Why do I need to have a manager on site? I can do all of that through technology. So these are the kind of changes that are happening here. And on top of that, all those changes, we have a huge amount of mega shifts that are happening here. The industry we had, and many of you have been involved in that for years, we were very much a local business. The local companies you worked for were much more local. They were much more, just there, nothing global about them. And the whole management of facilities was called a facility manager. Well, as we moved to yesterday, the whole process of facilities began to change a little bit, because it moved from just being a facility to actually managing more than just the facility. The whole property, the whole aspect of that asset began to change as well. And firms become more regional and much more national in their scope. As that began to occur today, we have many more companies that you all work for. Many of them are now national or global. They're impacted by national and global events. They have national and global suppliers. They have national and global clients. And the whole facility part here has now moved much more away from the facility management title into much more of a business leader, because that's where clearly you are performing at the level you are today. Much more than just managing the four walls. You're doing a lot more of what's inside the four walls. When you get to this thing about tomorrow, there's a whole change. The use of technology is going to have predictive analytics. There are analytics today that will tell you who to hire, how to hire. It will tell you all the movement of every person in the facility. It will have tenant chips that will open up doors, that will turn on lights, that will change temperatures, that will kick up computers, that will access elevators, access parking garages. All of this begins to change. It becomes very predictive. As that happens here, the whole title thing begins to change, and many of you will become enterprise leaders, because this is no longer just about the facility now. It's about the workplace environment. It's about creating places where people want to be. It's about creating a culture inside an organization that attracts and retains great people. So these changes begin to occur here at a very, very rapid pace. Then we have these transformative events. There are 30 of these events right now that are happening at the same time. So in addition to those headlines, in addition to those transformative changes I just talked about, all these things are creating challenges in communities and with companies that you work for. Whether it's abundance of capital, whether that's a growth or whatever, the change in economy, the Internet of Everything, consolidation, take your pick. All of these things are beginning to happen and happen at the same time. And when so that happens, that's why what you are experiencing now and will experience much more rapidly over the next several years is this transformation of an industry. IFMA and facility management will not be the way it used to be. It will be very, very different because of these kinds of changes. Whether it's robotics, artificial intelligence, all of that is clearly going forward. As you look at where you are from a facilities perspective, we used to be much more about building-centric, very building-centric. And then we said, well, we'll start to add a lot more services. We'll become a little more services to the employees or the facilities that are there. Then we became much more company-centric, trying to focus on the company's, strategic directions. And there was a lot more things added about the company brand and how the buildings look and how that interacts. But now we're moving to a much more employee-centric format. It's all about the experience. It's all about what you provide in your facilities. If it's not a positive experience, employees will not stay. Employees that don't stay mean unhappy employers, etc. So what that happens, it means that your role is much more experiential. It's much more about the culture. It's much more about the whole environment under which these folks come to work every day. And the other thing that's changing is work. It's not just work, it's also the worker. And right now the biggest one is work is following the workers, not a fixed location. And over time, you're going to see more and more work not being performed at your facility. It will be outsourced in a variety of ways. Either outsourced geographically, outsourced to the cloud or to the internet, outsourced to independent contractors, but it will not be where everybody has to be hired to do the job and has to work in the same place. That is a big fundamental change, and that changes very, very rapidly, and it's going on, but work is following the worker. Every single one of you, probably in this room here, have a cell phone. Every one of you have gotten a text message or an emails about something at work. You probably all have responded in the last 1 hour or so about something might be related to work. Or before you get back, you will respond on. You are connected to work, but you're not there. You're doing work, but you're not there. You go home tonight, or you have the weekend, you have to do work. You're connected, but you're not there. That is why work follows the worker, not the worker going to the location. That's a big shift. Technology, automation, robotics, retooling is all the norm. But innovation today is outpacing regulation. So many things are changing faster than the government, which is maybe a good thing, can regulate. But the technology exists for so many new and exciting things. Whether it's the glass on a window, the glass on the window that can become a multimedia center. The glass on the window today exists already where it can become your computer. You touch the window and you can see your computer screen. You can communicate, you can Skype, you can do anything, have GoToMeeting, whatever you want to do on your window. That technology exists, but we haven't even changed those windows in many buildings. This is what I mean about innovation is way outpacing the ability for people to regulate and control for the moment. Specialists and entrepreneurs are going to flourish in this next generation of workers because it is those who are creative and innovative, those who have specialized skills, those who can contribute, and they will do that at their time and at their location, not necessarily at your time and your location, but they will meet all deadlines. The same thing happens here, where the age of the freelancer is projected right now by 2020, as many as 50% of the workforce today is going to be in some form of freelance condition. 50%. It's about 20 or 30% right now. So we only got about 20% more to go. Way, way more people are going to be working as a freelancer. And that means you'll have a lot more IC, independent contractors working for you. You'll have people you'll outsource, you'll communicate. Oh yeah, the IT person, well, they're over here in Orange County, or this person's up in Los Angeles, this person's in Nevada. Whatever it might be, it's all going to be based on that. So the on-demand workforce, which you are all going to be experiencing, is clearly going to create a new ecosystem of work, a new way of which you are going to have to manage your facilities, a new way which you're going to interact with those people inside your buildings. That is this new ecosystem that we're about to enter. And then we have all these technology disruptors. I'm not going to spend much time on this one here. But if you add all these things up here, whether it's a wearable technology, 6 billion devices connected in 16, 75 billion by 2025. We will have those 10 chips. We will have all that connectivity that we all want to have on wearable technology. They're talking about cell phones that are going to be in your contact lens that are on your glasses. There will be no more cell phones. It will be there. You can click and there'll be a 3D out in front if you want. There'll be much more hand motion, eye click, your eye blinking. It'll be things that happen that will not be the cell phones. This is the wearable technology you're talking about. We can go over to cloud technology, where 80% of the apps are being run on that, will be in the cloud by 2025. So as all of these things begin to shift up there, you can get down to the Internet of Everything. So personal robots, there's 35 million. How many of you have Alexa? Anyone have Alexa here? Look at it, okay. About a quarter of the room have Alexa. I wish they'd change the name, and my wife believes her, then she believes me, but other than that. But all of that is about personal robots. It's about all those things. Industrial robots, a $45 billion industry by 2025. That's why you're changing. That's why the need for you to be ahead of the curve and how these changes happen so that you begin to be part of that change. And of course, the advanced robotics, where they can perform surgeries, they can, all of that kind of stuff. And 65% of children right now in primary schools are going to work in a job that does not exist today. 65%. That's why the fundamentals of what we have to teach them, critical thinking, how they can read, how they can communicate, how they can articulate a thought, how they can formulate those things, work collaboratively together. That is about what that is. And these disruptors are now happening at the same time as those 30 transformative changes, at the same time that the industry is shifting, at the same time that those headlines are occurring, all the same time. We have energy storage, huge market coming up here, almost $11 billion market by 2025. 3D printing, all that, $5.5 billion, 16 going to $35 billion. They will manufacture tools. They talk about manufacturing body parts, veins and organs and that stuff. They can do 3D manufacturing. All that is already existing today. They just have not, the marketplace is not caught up with the technology that's there. But building materials are going to change. New genes will obviously create a lot of that stuff, whether it's biofuels or other aspects of that. And of course, social media. 2 billion social media users. So you begin to look at all that as disruptors. You wonder why companies are having a challenge today to get productivity, why they're having a challenge to create a great workplace environment, why they're trying to create the places that they're, the place where people want to be. Because all this is happening. It's causing everyone, angst and uncertainty and change, and all the things that begin to happen as a result of that. And oh yeah, I forgot to tell you about real estate cycles. If you want to have that, and when does wine get served? Because they're going to start drinking heavily in a minute. At the same time here, real estate is also a cyclical business. Real estate is a response to industries that grow and establish. They build buildings and they create offices or industrial buildings or warehouse distribution factories, whatever. They build all of that based on demand. But because it's a cyclical business, in the last 50 years, there has been a predictable real estate cycle. The last 50 years. And what has happened is the last 50 years, every single real estate cycle in this country has started on a year that ends in a 2, 3, or 4. And every single cycle in the last 50 years has ended on a year that ends in a 7, 8, or a 9. In the last 50 years. And so we are somewhere in the fourth quarter here in this cycle. We are moving up here in the first quarter. The impact of that, the Tax Act that just got passed could change that slightly, because clearly we have reduced corporate taxes. We're creating a more investment-based society a little bit in America. So I think that could cause that to change a little bit. But all that means is we're no longer at the beginning of a cycle, we're toward an ending of a cycle or a change of a cycle. Every cycle has names, all those things that have names. I'll just pick a couple of these out. If you look in the 1993 to 98, the age of technology and startups. Real estate was driven by a lot of that. So what happened? Austin, Texas, Raleigh, North Carolina, Seattle, Portland, Silicon Valley. Other places that had great technology and telecommunications became the core of what drove a lot of companies to go create businesses and create facilities and create that there. Then that all changed. And we had 9/11 and we had a downturn. We came out, we borrowed a lot of money, went into debt, and that caused a huge amount of problem. And when did that recession happen? 2008. It changed. We came out of that. Right now we're in this whole age of capital, asset, and entity rebalancing. Which means what? Which means we have record levels of assets being sold in this country because of the abundance of capital, the rebalancing of getting rid of core, non-core, companies consolidating, companies rechanging, new corporate headquarters, new facilities, but all this is about how they rebalance themselves. And entity rebalancing is a way of which they've merged or acquired or consolidated amongst competitors, or brought other companies. But we'll change. We'll get into new issues here when accelerators and technology innovation will take hold. And why will it take hold here in the 20s and the 30s? How many of you are boomers today? Just raise your hand. Maybe if you're a boomer. Okay, well, all these boomers, they're all toast. Okay, they're gone. Because they're the ones that are holding up. They're holding up this acceptance of technology because they're too doggone old to want to change. And so what happens is that they end up waiting until we boot them out the door. So maybe a good thing today is go home and go fire a boomer. No. But it begins to change a lot. And so I make fun of it, but these cycles are clearly a place which drives asset consideration and decisions about companies on what they do. And here's some proof points. If you don't think any of this stuff is real, here's just a couple proof points. This wave, in those yellow bars, are all real estate, commercial real estate, and multifamily real estate assets sold in America. There's a wave. Look at the wave. So I'm trying to show you that this is a wave, and we're nearing the peaking part of that wave. This is San Diego's. Just the same, all assets in San Diego. There's another wave-like effect coming forward here. You take a look at all mortgage loan originations for commercial facilities and multifamily, and loan originations, and you go through there is a wave, and it's peaked. In 2016, it was the first year that the mortgage loan originations were lower than the prior year. It declined in 16. So it's slowing down the amount of originations that are coming forward. And that's some new underwriting criteria. That's also, you can't get the same loan to cost ratios you could get before. NAREIT, that's the National Association of Real Estate Investment Trusts. The two lowest points in the NAREIT history since 1993 were 1998 and 2008. And no one believes that as this growing going to go further. Why has it got higher? Because it was the best place to put capital as an alternative investment, because the other asset classes in stock were not performing at the same level of dividend return that you could get. So they attracted a tremendous amount of capital coming in there. This is Green Street, one of all the pension funds and life insurance companies and capital providers on Wall Street use Green Street as a way of looking at where markets are. There's the wave, and for the last several periods, it has flattened out. No one at Green Street believes that green line is going to be out into the ceiling. So you can see a change that begins to happen. And that's why I'm just saying, I don't know what's this year or next year or whatever, but it begins to change as that occurs. All office furniture sold in America. There's the waves. And it goes back again to where things might be. So you see a peaking. Peakings always happen in those 7s and 8s. If you take a look at the treasury spread, and this is an indication, real estate that we use here, but the point of this is it's getting back down, moving its way down. It's slowing down that spread between the 10-year and the 2-year treasury. If you see any of these issues that begin to happen at all in your industry, at all in your company, and all in the assets that you partake in, anything that begins to happen in here begins to tell you that there's an indication that things are about to change, that there is a transition happening between one cycle and another. But all of these, whether it's less square feet per employee. I mean, if you look at the last leases signed up in San Francisco, they're like 100, 107, 105, 102 square feet per employee. Very, very small, very, very different as that happens. So look at those kind of things. And then, oh, by the way, we're going to close about 13,000 stores in 2018. 13,000 different retailers will go out of business in this coming year. So we're going to have a very dramatic change that's happening, and it's accelerated. The closures were over 8,000 in 2000. You just saw the announcement today. Sears is closing more. They're all going the same way. So all this begins to mean this is a change in a cycle. a change in what it is, a repurposing of the real estate that's out there. But what happens when cycles peak like this then? Very simple. You can take a look at the returns. And one of the things in your space, particularly in the industrial warehouse, last mile distribution centers, has done very, very well. Why? Because it's responding to this new technology, responding to this last mile, responding to the Amazons and all this other world. It creates great opportunities. So large flex space and warehouse space have done very well, and office is slowing down. Retail is down, multifamily is down, healthcare, you can see them all. Low returns in the last year. That means that things are slowing down. The same way we have a lot of capital. I talked about it earlier, about all this capital out there. Right now there's about, this is through July of 17, the latest numbers I have. But let's call it $250 billion of closed-end private real estate fund capital that has not been deployed. $250 billion. That is without sovereigns, high net worth, syndicators, corporations, institutions, REITs, or anybody else in the game. Add another $200 or so billion to that, $200 or $300 billion. There's $400 or $500 billion trying to find a home in real estate. Therefore, what does it do? It drives prices down, and people want to do build-to-suits. It causes Amazon to put up a new corporate location. It creates all of these opportunities when so much capital is in the marketplace. That's why prices have risen so dramatically and cap rates have dropped. But then what happens? Fundraising in real estate goes down. So the amount of funds being raised is way going down because we have too much money. So in this period of transition, where you have too much money and not enough assets that make sense, which means that we're slowing down. It's changing. And that's what I'm trying to suggest to you here. A survey of all asset managers in the country. And so what is the biggest concern you have with fund managers? Asset pricing. 62% thought that was a concern. And so part of that is that they think that asset prices are too high, and therefore they're not going to buy. Therefore, that capital raise will not get deployed. Therefore, all these things happen. So what do? You redeploy internally sometimes. They redevelop buildings. They create new facilities. There's consolidation that goes on. All that begins to happen. Look at the stock of Office Depot. I'm just giving you a couple examples here where if things are so robust, then why are things going in this direction? You know, I mean, things are slowing down. There's Office Depot stock. I'm sorry about Steelcase. Where is it? Yeah, I'm sorry. Good luck. Get the resume out. But anyway, things are changing, and I make fun of that. They've got a new leadership in that company, and they're trying to make that change on there because the whole part of how we buy, equipment and things for space is changing dramatically. The other thing that's happening too is the percent of people retiring. And if you look at that, we finished a survey for IRM, and we found out that 55% of people are going to retire, 55% of the leadership in that are going to retire within the next 10 years. This is this change from one generation to another. How many of you are over the age of 60 right now? Just please raise your hand and I'll acknowledge it. Okay. Well, you guys are all toast, but you'll be gone, and others will take your place. And that's the exciting part. But when you have change in leadership, this is also at the CEO of your companies. It's at the place where the CFOs and the COOs and all the others who begin to do that, they're also in that boomer age. And now when you see this, you begin to say, wow, I understand why these changes are occurring. But real estate is very technology driven. It's very generationally driven, very much so. I'm going to give you these two asset classes. And I'm going to categorize it by generation. Everybody in this room is from a generation. I don't think anybody here is over the age of 89. Very few, probably over the age of 71. If you are, good luck. The red bars are the boomers that are there. The green bars are the X generation, the millennials, and the Zs are following. An interesting part, again, how many are the X generation? Just please raise your hand. Okay, please look around at who these X generation are, okay? This is the generation with the highest rate of incarceration of any generation in America. This is the only generation in American history where their SAT scores went down over the prior generation. They're called the dumbest generation in America, but they're different. It also has the highest percent of this generation still lives at home with mommy and daddy. Okay? These folks can't tie their shoes, you know. But as they go there, we have everything in real estate is driven by this generational, who you are, where you were born, how you do it. Here's an example. On the office side, the baby boomers, all the ones that raise your hand, and many of the folks that you work for, at your bosses, okay, they are about to retire, but they do not want to change. They want the trappings of success. I've worked my whole life here. I deserve that corner office. I want this whole. These guys are old codgers, but they all need to have this tapestries that they've worked their life for. So they need 350 square feet for one of these old folks, okay, to kind of wheel around, But they need a lot of space. Then we have the Gen Xers. And the Gen Xers come along in the office and they say, hey, relax, flex time. I need to work out. I need to take some steroids. So they wanted portable money, portable space, and so we said, we love you, and just push them into the cubes. Okay, hey, you love this little square. It really looks great, Water your plant once in a while. And as this happened, the amount of square footage, though, per employee dropped to 250 square feet as we moved these into cubes. And then the millennials came along and they said, kumbaya, I need to have meaningful hours. I don't get up at 9 o'clock, I can't tie my shoes, whatever they can't do. They want teamwork and they want to have opportunity, but these folks are lost. But at the end of the day, they want collaborative space. The greatest thing with a millennial today, what you should do is change their space every quarter. And they go, oh, God, new space. Hey, this is good. Maybe I got promoted. They're so confused. Just move them around the office, and they'll stick around a lot longer. But we dropped down to less than 150 square feet per employee. And the Z's came along, and this is where the technology is digital, virtual, mobility, 24/7, is again the amount of square footage drops. That's why you've seen a decline in office space construction, why you've seen these changes, because the nature of work and workers has changed dramatically based on generations that people are there. 37% of the workforce in America today did some or all of their work at home. Only 9% did so in 1995. I mean, so many of you I know have worked from home, have worked from your cars or whatever. 4 million people telecommute. 50% will be freelancers. 38% will be automated. And of the top 10 jobs in office, of the top 50 jobs in fastest growing jobs in America, only 10 of those require space. We need more nurses. We need more technicians. We need more elderly care. We need people that are there that don't require space. So you can begin to look at it, and the average workspace is only occupied 55% of the time, and there's so much shadow space out there because of that. No one's in your space right now. Your space is on, but you're paying rent. You're paying your pass-through, whatever that is. You're not there on Saturdays or Sundays. You're not there between 10 at night and 6 in the morning. So this is where office and work begins to change, doesn't it? It's no longer just a 9 to 5, 8 to 6 building. It's going to be a 24/7 building because workforces are going to come in and do multi-shifts and multi-changes that happen here. So as you look at here, by 2020, 45% of our workforce will be millennials, and by 2025, they'll grow to at least 75%. So we have to deal with this new generational workforce that comes in. And so what do millennials want? These are folks that like to hug the whales, hug the trees, they hug everybody, hug their bicycles, whatever. But they want all this work-life balance. They don't even know what work-life is, but I need work-life balance, Flexible schedules, collaborative, open space. They want all this stuff here. And interestingly, in the surveys, 81% of millennials want to choose their own hours to work. It's amazing, It's just amazing. Our daughter is a millennial, and I swear to God, if you called her right now and said, "What are you having for dinner?" she'd go, "Oh, I didn't forgot about that." It's like the kid's clueless. And I said, "What are you going to do?" "Oh, I'll go to Whole Foods and whatever." But the point is, they just think differently. So they want all this stuff that goes on, that happens there. And so that thing is pet friendly. I took a tour with just a handful of people, very small group of people, with the CEO of forgot the name of it. Doggone it, forgot the name of the company. But it's the internet company, Airbnb. And I've done so many companies last year, I can't remember all. So Airbnb, up in San Francisco. I went to the Airbnb, kind of corporate headquarters. I swear, I was walking into a drug rehab center. I mean, there was more blue hair, green hair, purple hair. There were dogs, there were parrots, there was stuff going on there. I didn't know what was happening. And so, but it made me aware very much so. We said, well, how do you get worker productivity in a place that looked like a drug rehab center, like a teen drop-in center? Everybody's goofing around. And they said, because there's accountability in teams. And it's very much team-based in terms of the outputs that are there. And we don't tell people how to do it. We expect them to do it. It's very much that way. But I tell you, that's a real experience going up there. But that's a big change that happens there in the Airbnb as an example. So what happens in that space? Look at this is the amount of CoStar data. This is the amount of square footage of office space that's been delivered. It is way slowed down, hasn't it? Because renewals that happen are putting more people in the same space, reducing the amount of square footage, or what? Outsourcing the work, changing the workplace that comes forward. There's the cap rates and the volume you can see right there, just the wave-like effect on office. You can see that asset sales are slowing down here clearly, down overall from entity portfolio side. Sales were down dramatically in the third quarter of this year. The fourth quarter is not out yet here, but they're down 18%. Year-over-year sales down 25%. CBD office sales down 49%. Things are slowing down dramatically in the office space. And in San Diego, you can just take a look here. The vacancies are still relatively high from that perspective. So things are changing and changing rapidly. Industrial or warehouse distribution, again, generational based. But workers are producing a lot more, 47% more than they were 20 years ago. You take a look here that Amazon has 45,000 Kiva robots along 250,000 humans. And that's before they hired that 75,000 over the last couple of months. Almost 2 million industrial robots, 128,000 cobots, humans and robots working side by side. So the cost savings is enormous. There's no HR, there's no overtime, there's no breaks, there's no anything. Just plug them in and get to go, right? And so it changes the nature of how this begins to happen. And the fetch robot, I wish my kid was that way. Go get me a beer, whatever. They had these fetch robots, and they're all over Amazon, all over these facilities. There's this little guy here. And they just scoot around, and they can fetch anything you want. You just tell them, and verbally, they go get it. So where's the human interaction anymore? It changes the nature of work. And that's all I'm trying to highlight for you here. There's the space that's there. Now, why has the space risen in that place? Because of that last mile, the technology, the Amazon, the way in which people have looked at it, because that's where all these distribution warehouse facilities are being constructed at core places across the country. There's the wave-like effect in industrial sales. There also, though, have changed. What's the biggest change here has been entity sales. That means companies being sold. So there are very few companies being on the marketplace to be sold today. So that's there. But single asset sales, industrial, are up. Single asset for flex space, though, is down. So it's changing as well. And there's San Diego. Well, look at the difference between office and industrial in San Diego. Just a comparison, 11 to 3.5. Kind of a big change. So what would I do if I were you? What would I do if I was you and I'm sitting here going, okay, I'm part of IFMA, I've got my job here, I'm trying to figure out where my career goes and how that's going to happen here. So here's a couple recommendations. All of your companies in what you do need to take an absolute in-depth and critical look at the impact of technology on your business and on your company, and how your facility and how your workplace environment is going to respond to those new technologies. And there are a great deal. Number two, I would change your titles. I mentioned that to the board this morning. I said, I think your titles of facility managers are ridiculous because it has nothing to do with what you do. If all you do is manage bricks and mortar, maybe you are a facility manager. But if you manage the workplace environment, you're far more than that. And that other, I forget who came up with that title. What was that one title, that worker solution or what you?
Factors specialist.
Yeah, I mean, you have these workplaces specialists and things, but if you don't change your titles in terms of where you are, it will restrict your value inside the corporation. It will restrict your compensation. It will restrict your ability to advance because they view you as four walls, not what's inside the four walls. Yep. That's why you need to change, because otherwise you become less relevant because computers and automated robots can take care of four walls and roofs and HVACs. but they cannot always take place in the workplace environment, the culture that's created by the workplace environment. I think I would assess the wellness rating. Every one of you should have a wellness rating on your facilities. Every one of you. Because wellness is a huge, and there's a wellness organization that does that, and you can, part of it's like a USGBC, but it's all the same kind of thing. But you need to obviously work with HR to create that workplace that's desirable as something where people want to be. But what is your wellness rating? What is your smartness rating on the building? Not just your green rating, but all those are things you're going to have to explore. I would clearly have a 5-year plan which you're trying to accomplish. It's not just coming to work and doing your job, but it's coming to work for a purpose. What is the purpose? What do you do and why do you do it, and what are your measures of success 5 years if you do a great job? How do you define success? How do you define your future? All of you should examine that very critically. I would identify that all of the touch points in your facility, every single touch point from the moment they leave a street, there's probably 100 different touch points or more that every employee touches before they sit down. And there's more touch points there with the phone, the computer, and the lighting, the air conditioning, and all that stuff. But all that is all incorporated. And if you look at the touch points, how have you looked at that as a way in which you can upgrade or enhance to make worker experience and worker environment and the workplace environment a more conducive place to work? That's something you all should examine on a regular basis. I would create an innovations committee. Because technology is going so fast, you should be the sponsors in your companies to say, we need to look at this technology and how we're creating a great place for our employees. We can be more productive, we can be more healthier, extend longer, all the things that are there regarding that. How can we make that happen? And be innovative and creative in what we do. And I would start with a whiteboard. I think many people start with already what they have, and they precondition the output, the outcomes. And the best way to look at anything that you do is start with a whiteboard and say, what am I doing that I should eliminate? What can I do in our organization doing that could be eliminated? How can I be an active needle mover in our organization to help the company achieve its long-term vision and goals? How can that happen? That starts with a whiteboard, kind of an exercise. So I'm going to end with some predictions. And again, these are things that I think are going to happen by 2025. I think you're going to see this. I think we're going to move clearly to a cashless society. Sweden is about 90% cashless today. We're going to move much more. We have a $2 trillion underground economy in this country right now. And so why are we going to move to cashless? So the government can tax us. Because with no money, everything is now electronic. Everything then can be taxable. Everything is a transaction. There is no way to hide anything because everything is now electronic. And we'll move to that way. But as I said, Sweden and other countries are moving that way. They're 90% cashless today. I think that many real estate firms that you know in this community, at least a third of them, or 25 to 30%, will be gone in a very short period of time. Why? Because those aging founders are leaving and they are selling or moving out or consolidating, and we're going to have fewer and fewer firms, just like in your industry as well. I think we're going to see in real estate the certified underwriters come up. Because when you're looking at brokers today, I don't know what the heck they do, but they don't do much. And at the end of the day, I don't think we need brokers as they exist today. I think we need brokers who are strategic advisors, because they will help the client achieve their long-term goals. So we'll have certified underwriters, though, which will be major accounting firms, KPMG, PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers. All those will start underwriting assets. Why? Because in a global economy, assets and facilities will change. I don't care whether you're in Europe or in Asia or in Australia, you can buy and sell assets. And if it's been underwritten by PwC or KPMG or someone like that, a law firm, then I don't need a broker for what? What do I need it for? That's where the change begins to happen. I think we're going to see a lot of jobs lost to robots in the next 10 years. At least 10 million will be lost to robots. I think buildings under 250,000 square feet can be managed and will be managed remotely. They will not have on-site unless it's required by law to have someone on-site. But that'll be very, very, very much in existence. I think we're going to see food being grown in commercial buildings. It'll be grown on your roofs, it'll be grown on your walls. There's 700,000 unused containers right now. If you just go to freightfarms.com and you look at that up, you'll see what they can raise urban farms in containers. They can grow food on walls of buildings. They can harvest food on roofs and in courtyards. And so as this begins to happen, bringing food closer to the community versus trucking them in will be very commonplace in the future. I think we're going to see all kinds of buildings that are being taxed and fined for not meeting energy efficient standards. You will pay enormous penalties by local, county, cities, county, state, and federal agencies if you have not reached a green standard. That will be very common. Because if you're using too much electricity or using too much natural gas or using more of those resources, water, you will end up paying huge fines. So that's why this whole greening thing is very important. And that's moving very quickly down the path. I think you're going to see a lot of office space and still facility space that you have being leased not by square footage but by units of consumption. Well, how many? Because large corporations will buy 1 million units of consumption, and then they can, these are for national tenants, but they can use these coupons with any national landlords, any national owners of facilities. They can do all of that with units of consumption, and they can apply it wherever they want to go. I think you're going to see at least women in 40% of the C-suites in real estate. Why? Well, because there's more women coming out of college than men. 57% of college enrollees today are women. Only 43% are men. Men are in a declining percentages of people going to college. I mean, they're just like useless. And so the women are going like crazy. And so as you change, I think that's a healthy change, but you're going to see this at the C-suite level. And why can't it be a facility enterprise leader? Why does it have to be, the CEO? HR directors and facility folks like yourself will have more impact on lease negotiations and space design. And how will you have more impact? When you begin to change your title from just being a four-wall to being this workplace environment. That's where your voice is heard. That's where your strategies are employed. That's where you will rise in the corporation and make more money and obviously have a C-suite opportunity because of that. I think we're going to have a shortage of qualified workers. We are not producing enough people that are job ready. We do not have enough qualified people who can take the jobs that many of the people in today. And when the boomers all finally get off their fannies and retire, there is going to be a huge void of people in our industry. So those that I was kind of making fun of, forget the millennials, no, I'm just kidding. But the millennials, there'll be a lot of tremendous income opportunities for everyone who's under the age of 40 today. Because we're going to have a shortage of qualified people. And this could be a real challenge. So what does that mean? You have the same problem we're going to have at all your companies. If we can't get qualified people, this could be a real challenge. Facilities are going to have this wellness rating. I think it's going to be mandatory. I think you should all make sure you have something like that. I think you're going to find, as this industry changes, that everything that you do is going to be transformative. Every single thing that you begin to look at is going to be changing. And I've tried to share with you today both the cycles and the transformation and the changes, the technology disruptors, and everything that happens. And so you too have to change, and the most exciting time to be in this industry. Thank you very much for your time.
We have time for questions. Excuse me, we have time for questions if anybody has questions.
He's all choked up.
Yeah. So I'm a vendor, and I'm very fortunate that the company I work for is at the forefront of technology. But I'd say about 95% of everything my clients are asking me for are things that we had 15 years ago. So how
old are people making that request?
Generally, they're my age or older. And I see that more of them are getting closer to my age. I'm getting old. So.
Here's the issue. As I said, change and technology is moving at such a rapid pace that it's very challenging for people to have to change. The people, when they're in their comfort zone, do not want to leave their comfort zone. So what I did yesterday, I can feel comfortable doing tomorrow. They're resistors to change. And so what has to happen is there needs to be a value proposition to show why change is actually going to make our lives better. It's not just change for change's sake. That's all. Good question. Yes, sir.
I'm a boomer, and I refuse to step aside.
Good.
Go, Walton.
I guess I have a couple of mentors that I look at and ask you the same question. When is Elon Musk going to move aside?
I don't know when. He didn't call me up yesterday and tell me, but one of the questions he just talked about that he has worked with mentors, correct? And they're probably your age or older, or is that a fair statement?
No, I've got a young guy at work, and he's my mentor.
Okay,
as well.
that's what I want to say is that everyone who is a boomer should have mentors who are under the age of 30. That should be the mentor, because that's how you'll stay current. It's not the old folks; they're like dinosaurs. It's the young folks that will challenge you. You read this book? Have you heard about this? Let's go down here. Are you tweeting yet? Whatever. They're going to get you going doing something, but it's going to make you more dynamic. So I love to see every old folk, every over 40 or 50 at least have a young person as a mentor. I think that'd be a great companion, and you can share your wisdom with them as well.
Absolutely.
I think that's great. Great question. Yes, ma'am.
It appears that the cycles are almost predetermined. How much do politics or changes in our culture affect those cycles?
Huge. The question was how do culture and government and other things, impact cycles. They're a huge impact. That's why this cycle could change, and the tax law has a huge impact because we're giving more money back to create jobs. We're going to create more money in the economy. That's going to change. And so that's impactful. Government can pass regulations. Government can borrow money. Government went into massive debt. The last 8 years went into $10 trillion worth of added debt. So it softened out that, but the cycles are somewhat the same. I think a longer conversation, not at this, but cycles themselves, they go really in 60, 70-year cycles. So you have to look at the broader array, not just the moment in time. So yes, government can change it pretty dramatically. I hope it doesn't go down. But you can already see that there are slowdowns because capital and assets are way too overpriced. Corporations and companies are being challenged in many of the industry sectors. Retail in particular is massively being challenged, and the outsourcing of work globally has also changed the nature. So I think we're going to see some change. Yes, ma'am.
What's going to happen to that retail space? Is it going to turn into warehousing? Or is it going to turn into office? What is it going to turn into?
Where's retail space going? The question is, where is retail space going to go? It's going to turn in much more mixed use. It'll be multifamily because we have an incredible housing affordability issue in this country. And San Diego is one of the forefronts of the worst places to be. Silicon Valley is worse, but a significant portion of the people who live in this community cannot afford, like 60-70% cannot afford a median price home. And so worker affordability is a massive issue in San Diego County. And that's where they're going to convert those into much more some multifamily and create more neighborhoods
And more high density.
around
So
that.
retail
More density.
is not such a bad thing.
And then might put some retail on
Retail
on the bottom, but they're going to have senior facilities. They'll have workforce housing. They'll have rental conventional housing. That'll all happen. All right. Again, if you want to copy my slide, give me a card. Always have a wonderful day and a wonderful year. Thank you.